What's up, everybody? Deuces to everybody. You see the title. Roy Jones Jr. believes he's a better fighter than Floyd Mayweather TBE. We're going to talk soft boxing. But before I do, I would like to praise and glory to God. I will praise you, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will show forth your marvelous works. And I will sing and rejoice in you. I'll sing praise to your name, O Most High. We will praise you, O Lord, with our whole heart. We will show for your marvelous works. We'll be glad and rejoice in you. We'll sing praise to your name, O Most High. We will praise you. We will praise you every day, in every way. We will praise you. We will praise you. We will praise you, yeah. Every day, in every way, we will praise you. Peace to you all. You know, the best way to praise God, give him the glory, is simply by living, allowing him to have his way with us. And so we can show people through many different means how good he is. That's the whole point behind it. All praise and glory to you, Jesus Christ. Let's get into it. We're going to get into it right now. I was having a little fun with this boxing stuff because, you know, it's fun to talk boxing. Before I do, though, I want to just refer you guys to Master Boxing with Eric Bradley. If you haven't checked out that channel, you should. It teaches you different things. They talk about the peekaboo defense. They talk about the Philly shell. Here, there's some testimonies from different boxers that are being tutored by Eric Bradley, the fight doctor. Believe you me, this guy gives you really good information. You know, here you can see on the side here, How to Attack the Body, Volume 1 by Coach Eric Bradley. Is really awesome. A breakdown boxing bit by bit. And you can always go to the website, Master Boxing. You can actually subscribe, and then you can actually be tutored into how to deal with boxing. Remember, boxing is a lot about repetition, muscle memory, to get it so that you don't think about what you're doing in that ring at any time. You just decide, this is what I'm going to do, and you do it. All right? All right, so we're going to talk right now about the statement that Roy Jones Jr. made early this year, February this year, concerning Floyd Mayweather Jr. Roy Jones Jr. said, Mayweather is TBE, never came close to what I did. And some of you guys are going to be like, no, man, Roy, wait, hold up. Let's hear what Roy Jones Jr. means by that. Okay? So let's read the article and let's go through it. So this coming Thursday, former 4-division world champion Roy Jones Jr. is going to hang up his gloves with one more fight in Pensacola, Florida. Jones, 65-9, 47 KOs, 49 years old, will enter the ring for what he promises to be his final time in a 10-round cruiserweight showdown with Scott Sigmund, 30-11-1, 16 KOs. And the undercard will be UFC, which is kind of cool. It's a mixed thing. And then Jones captured the world titles at middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, and made history in 2003 when he captured the WBA heavyweight title with a 12-round decision over John Ruiz. Jones became the first man in 100 years who began his career at 154 to rise all the way up and win the heavyweight title. Jones believes with confidence that he entertained the crowd like nobody else did. Now, this is the most important point. That Roy Jones Jr. is coming from an entertainment perspective, which is why he says Floyd is not TBE. From an entertainment perspective, he believes he is the guy that entertained the crowd like nobody else in history did. The great thing today is that it don't matter what anyone says or what anyone writes. You can type sickest boxing highlights into YouTube or Google and you'll see Roy Jones Jr. doing his thing. Nobody can change your mind after you see that. That's pound for pound. I did what I did. It happened. It's a fact, Jones says. So when he's talking about pound for pound, when he's talking about TBE, he means the best entertainer, or he means pound for pound, the best at entertaining the crowd. Okay. He says nobody else comes close. You can watch me side by side with anyone, and it's not close. But Mayweather considers himself to be TBE, not TBA, but TBE, the best ever, which Jones disagrees with. He admits Mayweather made far more money, but never came close to his prime skills and performances. Again, I disagree in terms of his prime skills. I think Floyd has more skills than Roy Jones Jr. However, I do agree that Roy Jones Jr. did mentor Floyd, and Floyd borrowed things from Roy, like those leaping left hooks. You know, the way how Floyd used those leaping left hooks, I think Roy was the guy that actually inspired Floyd to give his version of the leaping left hook and use it a lot more. In terms of performances, again, entertainment-wise, nobody touches Roy Jones Jr. In terms of boxing, however, when you talk TBE, you're really talking about level of competition, the people you actually beat, you know, your resume. You also looking at how you performed against the highest level of competition. And we're talking about performance. We're talking about how you box. And then we have to look at your boxing skills and abilities. I don't think Roy has more boxing skills and abilities than Floyd. I honestly think Floyd has almost everything that Roy has offensively, but Floyd has more defensive skills as well in addition. So that's something that I think Roy may have overlooked. When you're talking skill-wise, I don't care if he's in his prime or otherwise. I think Floyd is a much more all-rounded boxer than Roy is, obviously. But when he's talking about performance-wise, I think Roy takes the cake on that. I mean, you know, man, I used to want to jab like Roy, okay? Because he never telegraphed the jab. Instead, he feint the jab with his shoulder, and then he would throw the jab. And it was beautiful to watch Roy do his thing, not to mention the left hooks that he would do, the leaping left hooks and the leaping right hooks, and just those beautiful leaping wide hooks he would hit you with. The timing and just the way how he'd feint you and he'd come with the shot was just remarkable. Mayweather was a former 5-division champion with world titles at junior middleweight, welterweight, junior welterweight, lightweight, and super featherweight. Floyd Mayweather was TBE at making money. This is what Roy Jones Jr. is saying. But look at his highlights and look at mine. You can't pretend it's the same. You can't pretend there's ever been anyone coming close to what I did. Nobody you can name could touch me. I'm talking about nobody who's around now, nobody who was around in my prime, and nobody who's around anytime you can mention out of your mouth. And again, he's talking from an entertainment perspective and highlights perspective. In my prime, I was ruler. Simple as that. I understand there are a lot of great fighters who have followed me already since I was the champ. And I hope there's another who comes along and does even better, because I want to see that. But I haven't seen anyone do that, what I did yet. I haven't seen anyone turn pro at 154 pounds and win the heavyweight championship of the world. Even the great Sugar Ray Robinson, the pound-for-pound guy that he was, couldn't win the light heavyweight title after turning pro as a welterweight. He had a difficult time trying to do that. So that tells you how hard it is to jump up that kind of weight and win. So pound for pound, the greatest of all time, it isn't hard to figure out. Roy Jones Jr. is your king of the hill. So he points out another point. So he talks about entertainment-wise. And let me be honest with you guys. In terms of entertainment, you know, guys, before Roy Jones Jr. hit the scene, there was no such thing as an event, okay? Roy turned boxing into an event. He would come into the ring with, you know, rap music, his own rap music. He'd come into the ring dressed up different kinds of ways. You know, his entrances were fantastic. He was also athletic. He could do, you know, gymnastics. And then in the ring, he would just showboat while he was fighting. And he would just outclass his opponents, except when they reached a certain level. He was highly entertaining. He was a highly conditioned athlete, okay? Athletically speaking, he was fantastic and phenomenal. Boxing-wise, he'd exaggerate boxing movements so you could actually see it happen. His sense of timing was on point. Roy Jones Jr. was a beauty to watch against certain levels of competition, all right? And all of this just to say that he was an entertainment to his heart. Like Adrian Broner was an entertainer with his mouth. And Roy talked the talk, he walked the walk. I mean, you had to love Roy, because Roy brought a whole set of new things to the game. Even the crossover fights. Roy was the first guy to really talk about crossover fights, like MMA fighters fighting boxers. Floyd, bless his soul, was able to operate and actually execute some of the things that Roy wanted to do in his career, right? And then he borrowed a lot of stuff from Roy. Now, Floyd is in no way as entertaining as Roy is. It's just not, okay? But Floyd borrowed from Roy's model. Clearly, he borrowed from his model. And everything that's happening with Floyd that Floyd is doing today is really a preset of that is from Roy. Now, Floyd is a much more complete fighter, however. So that's why I say Floyd is TBE. We're talking boxing. If you're talking boxing resume, you're talking skills, if you're talking about the all-round determination, the will, the defense, the all-round package that Floyd has, being able to back up what you're saying, everything like that, Floyd is the more complete fighter than Roy. But when you're talking about entertainment-wise, the guy who captures the highlight reels, hands down, Roy Jones Jr. captures that. But I don't determine TBE based on highlight reels. I don't determine TBE based on that. But do understand, Roy also says he's the first to ever go from 154 pounds and win the heavyweight champion of the world. He's the only guy to ever do that. And that's remarkable. But of course, we also had guys who fought at heavyweight. They didn't become, you know, universally a heavyweight champion of the world, but there are guys who have done that. They fought at heavyweight, and colored heavyweights who have done that. Nonetheless, this is the point that Roy Jones Jr. does. Now, we're going to evaluate what Roy Jones Jr. has said in a different sphere. So he's talking first based on entertainment, which I cannot deny. Roy Jones Jr. is probably one of the most entertaining fighters you'll ever see in his prime. But when it comes to what TBE really is, as I told you, best ever and the greatest is two different things. And I think Roy is mixing them up. When you talk about the best ever, you have to look at other factors. So let's get into that, because Boxing Scene followed that up with this article. Hold on a second. It followed it up with this article. So they decided to go to CompuBox. So we're going to look at a number of different things. We're not just going to look at CompuBox. We're going to also look at the level of opposition that, you know, Roy Jones Jr. had, and the level of opposition that Floyd Mayweather Jr. had. And we're going to look at it in terms of all-time greats. We're going to look at it in terms of Hall of Famers. We're going to look at it in terms of legendary fighters, right? And let's start with the CompuBox. It's interesting, this CompuBox information, this data. CompuBox obviously is not everything, but just this is very interesting. So this is what this article said. In the lead up to his farewell fight tonight, former 4-divisional world champion Roy Jones Jr., this was February 8th, compared his skills to those of 5-divisional world champion Floyd Mayweather and said Jones was the more accomplished fighter. In an effort to compare the two future Hall of Famers from a statistical standpoint, CompuBox crunched data from their primes of both fighters. Jones from 1994 to 2002, 19 fights, and Mayweather from 1998 through 2007, 22 fights, and compiled the following report. Mayweather amassed a plus 23.8 plus-minus rating, which is ridiculous due to better defensive numbers, while Jones was plus 19.8. So Floyd was like 4+ points higher. Okay, both threw and landed similar amounts of total punches, 4 percentage points higher. Jones was busier with his power punches and landed 56.1 to Mayweather's 52.4. Mayweather's opponents just landed 22.5 of their power total punches and just 26.4 of their power shots, compared to 27.9 and 35.2 for Jones' opponents. So Jones actually got touched a lot more, even though Jones was saying, "Can't be touched, can't be touched," you know, that song. Actually, he could be touched more than Mayweather. Okay, Mayweather landed 6.7 jabs per round, which is 37.2% of all of his punches, to 28% with 3.7 per round for Jones, who uses jabs sparingly. The average jabs per round that are usually landed is 13.2 per round. Jones was involved in 3 of the top 10 greatest title fights plus-minus beatdowns in CompuBox history. The first one was against Reggie Johnson, which was plus 41, and then against Richard Hall, which was plus 40, and then Julio Gonzalez, which is plus 36. Let me just get to those guys so you can see who these people were. So Reggie Jones was a world champion. Let me see if I can find him. Reggie Johnson, I think is the name, not Reggie Jones. Did I say Reggie Jones? I mean Reggie Johnson. Reggie Johnson was the IBF light heavyweight champion of the world. And what's so impressive about what Roy Jones did in 1999 to Reggie Johnson was this. Let me get to Reggie Johnson here. So this is Reggie Johnson right here. What was impressive about it? Because Reggie Johnson was a good fighter. He wasn't, I wouldn't say he was a Hall of Fame fighter, but he was a good fighter. So Reggie Johnson was the WBA. No, he wasn't. He moved up from middleweight. He was the WBA middleweight champion. Okay, he was the WBA middleweight champion. He was beaten by John David Jackson and Jorge Castro. And then he moved up to light heavyweight, and he fought Roy Jones Jr. after he had won the IBF World Lightweight title. Okay, he didn't fought nobody necessarily big, but he gave Roy some trouble. I remember that fight where he gave Roy some trouble. I don't think he dropped Roy, but he was given. And you could argue he beat Roy in that fight, but nonetheless, they have it as a beat down there. Reggie Johnson. Okay, I think it's Reggie Johnson's his name, right? Yep. Okay. Hold on a second. So I'm sorry. My bad. Yes, Reggie Johnson. So he was a bona fide world champion, okay? Two-divisional world champion at middleweight and then at light heavyweight. Richard Hall, I don't know who he was, but Julio Cesar Gonzalez was also a good champion and a guy who had won championships. He had been a pretty long reigning champion, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just take a look at it. Julio Gonzalez was a very good champion. Let's be here. And Julio Gonzalez, I can't remember what he was, if he was WBA or WBC or what he was. Let me have a look at him here. I'll tell you. So Julio Cesar Gonzalez was a WBO world champion. He had actually beaten Darius Michael Zewski. All right, this is after Roy Jones Jr. had beaten him. He wasn't world champion at the time. He did, but he became world champion after, and he became WBO world champion. He was beaten after that and never became champion again. So he was a one-time world champion, but he was a good fighter. He was a solid fighter. Okay. And Roy Jones Jr. just dominated that. He just dominated. Okay. Oops. Okay. So, I mean, talk about beat down. He beat him down really bad, right? So it was plus 36, Julio Gonzalez. Now, Mayweather was involved in 2 of the top 10 greatest title fights, plus minus beatdowns in CompuBox history. He had plus 47 against Juan Manuel Marquez. Now, when you compare Reggie Johnson, Roger Hall, and Julio Gonzalez, none of them can even match up to the legacy of Juan Manuel Marquez. Okay, Juan Manuel Marquez is a legend. Julio Gonzalez is not a legend. Reggie Johnson is a very good fighter and 2-divisional world champion. And you know, but Marquez is a legend. Okay, when you talk about Juan Manuel, this is the biggest beatdown in CompuBox history. Okay, Floyd beat Marquez brutally. Okay, Marquez could not touch Floyd. Okay, this is the Marquez that knocked out Manny Pacquiao. Okay, so Juan Manuel Marquez is obviously a Mexican legend. Okay, I don't know if Julio Gonzalez is a legend or Reggie Johnson, but Marquez is a legend. Okay, he got beaten like if he was a little schoolboy. And then the other big beatdown was against Arturo Gatti, who is a Hall of Fame. Okay, and a legendary fighter for his fights with Mickey Ward. So what I'm trying to say to you guys is the level of competition that Floyd beat down, like mercilessly beat down, is so much higher than anything Roy has fought there that you have to give Floyd the credit. Again, when we talk TBE, I mean, this is what we're talking about. Okay, so I'm just saying. Now, when we look at their CompuBox stats, like punches thrown and stuff, we see that Roy Jones Jr., his average punches per round is 44.4. Floyd Mayweather is slightly higher by about a point, by about 1 punch, which is about 45 punches per round. So Floyd is a little bit more active in terms of punches thrown. And in terms of the CompuBox average, it should be about 55. So both of them are more snipers than anything else. And Roy, he landed 21.2 of those punches, whereas Floyd landed 20.8. So Floyd's a little less accurate than Roy was. Now, why this is interesting, and the average is really 16.6. So both of them are very accurate guys, 31%. So the difference between them is by about 1%, 1.4%. In terms of jabs, Floyd jabs a lot more. As you can see, he throws more and he lands more, and he has a higher connect percentage. Both of them are higher than the average. And when you look at power shots, while Roy throws more power shots, clearly because he throws more hooks, and he lands more power shots, the difference in the percentage is by about 4%, maybe 3%, 3.7%. Okay. Again, they're both much higher than the average. Now, what this shows is that in terms of punches, Floyd and Roy, offensively speaking, they're about the same. That's crazy, but they're about the same offensively. The difference is that Floyd jabs more than Roy does. He jabs more than Roy does, slightly more than Roy does. So he has a little bit less power punches, but all in all, they both are about the same offensively. And that's kind of crazy because Roy looks like the more explosive fighter, but they actually both fight at about the same rate, the same tempo per round. The amount of punches they throw, they're about the same in accuracy. So offensively speaking, Floyd and Roy are about the same. Defensively speaking is where they differ. Floyd is totally different on the defensive end. And so I'm just saying this just to say that when you're talking about TBE, there's not really much difference offensively between Floyd and Roy. Roy actually has more large looping punches than Floyd does. Floyd doesn't have that much. Floyd's punches are much more compact and shorter. In terms of athleticism, they're about the same. Quickness, they're about the same because Floyd's not the quickest welterweight in the world. Amir Khan's faster than Floyd. His timing, though, is ridiculous, and his reaction time is ridiculous. And so is Roy's. And so Floyd's like Roy in many respects offensively. The only thing is he's tighter defensively. And I think that's the difference that separates Floyd from Roy. Floyd's a lot more defensively responsible than Roy, who depends more or less on distance, controlling distance to win a fight, whereas Floyd can fight on the inside, on the outside. He has a lot more variety. So that leads us to looking at the resume of these guys. Let's talk about the legendary fighters that Roy Jones Jr. faced in his career. And we're going to count them, okay? And there are some legendary fighters. When I'm talking about legendary, I'm talking about almost all-time great legendary. That's what I'm talking about, that kind of level. So we can start off with the first legendary fighter. He's literally a legendary fighter. When you think of his name, he's a legend. Bernard Hopkins, who's basically a Hall of Famer, all right? And if you're a Hall of Famer, then you deserve to be talked about as a legendary fighter. Bernard Hopkins is a Hall of Famer, legendary fighter. His record speaks it all. And if you want to just see what it looks like, here, let me show you what his record looks like very quickly. Bernard Hopkins. So just to show you how legendary this guy is, we're going to start from the beginning of his career and work our way back. First of all, Bernard Hopkins was the first guy. I mean, Roy fought Bernard Hopkins early in his career, and then he fought him later on. And Hopkins got a win over Roy. Hopkins was the longest reigning middleweight champion of the world. He became IBF champion, faced guys like John David Jackson, Andrew Council, Simon Brown. He faced guys like Felix Trinidad, okay? And then he faced guys like William Joppy and Oscar De La Hoya, okay? And, you know, I mean, before he lost to Jermaine Taylor and then beat Antonio Tarver at the light heavyweight division, and then became a long reigning light heavyweight champion, beating guys like Jean Pascal and losing to Chad Dawson, then coming back and beating Tavoris Cloud, and then beating Bebert Shuvanov before losing to Sergey Kovalev. This guy is a legend, okay? This guy's a legendary fighter and definitely a Hall of Famer and no doubt going to be an all-time great. May not be high up in the all-time great rankings, but he's an all-time great, okay? Just is what it is. Let me close this down. All right, so that's Bernard Hopkins. Let's keep it rolling with Roy Jones Jr. Okay, so that's one of the people he got a win over, Bernard Hopkins. All right. Now after Bernard Hopkins was a legendary fighter, that's the first one. He fought James Toney, James Lights Out Toney, and that's just a legendary fighter. And let me get to him. James Light Out Toney. I mean, you don't have to say nothing. You just look at the names on this listing. James Toney went from a middleweight all the way up to he beat, first of all, Michael Nunn. He beat Michael Nunn to become the IBF middleweight champion. He went on to beat future champion Reggie Johnson. He then went and draw with Michael McCallum, finally beat Mike McCallum. Then he went on to face Iron Barkley and beat him. He then went on to face Roy Jones Jr. He lost to him. He then lost to Montel Griffith. Then he went on to, was a past world champion, by the way. He then went on to lose to Montel Griffith, beat Mike McCallum. He went up in weight. So he was in light heavyweight by that point in time. Then he went up to cruiserweight, beat Evander Holyfield at, I think it was at heavyweight. He moved up from cruiserweight to heavyweight. And then he had a draw with John Ruiz, a no contest, but really he beat John Ruiz. He had a draw with Rasim Hamed. He lost to Simon Peter. All of these are full-fledged heavyweights. And, you know, the dude's not even a heavyweight. You know what I mean? He then had a disqualification against Rasim Hamed, Rahman. And then he went down to cruiserweight, lost to Dennis Levedette, beat Bobby Gunn. Bobby Gunn was old, though. Lost to Lucas Brown. And that's basically it, you know. But the point is, he was a small heavyweight. And on occasion, he should have won the heavyweight title of the world, but he got disqualified for using PEDs. Okay, so James Toney is just a legend in the sport of boxing. And I just say this, not to take it lightly, but just to show you just how legendary Roy Jones Jr. is when it comes to fighting these great fighters. That's the second one. Then you got Vinny Pazienza. And just to show you guys what Vinny Pazienza accomplished. Again, another incredible fighter. Vinny Pazienza has fought legendary fighters as well. Let me show you the legendary fighters that Vinny Pazienza faced. First of all, he became the IBF lightweight champion when he beat Greg Hogan. He then went on to lose to Roger Mayweather, lose to Greg Hogan. He then went up in weight and faced Hector Camacho, who beat him. He then got a rematch with Greg Hogan, beat him. And then he went on to face at super middleweight. Okay. So he was, sorry, let me just say, he moved up to super lightweight. Okay. And fought a couple fights, lost some back fights and won some. And then he went up to super middleweight. He won the welterweight title against Robert Deli. And then he went up to super middleweight, won the IBO super middleweight title against a guy called Dan Sherry. Not that that matters. These are not important things. He fought Roy Jones Jr., lost to him, got stopped. Then went on to face, I think he faced Roberto Duran. I just don't know where it is. But he faced Roberto Duran somewhere. Oh, there it is. He faced Roberto Duran, got a win over Roberto Duran twice. Then he went on to face Pat Lawler. He stopped Pat Lawler at, I don't know what weight class it is. But literally, this guy fought in multiple weight classes. He had titles at lightweight, super lightweight, welterweight. What was it? He has wins over guys like Roberto Duran. He has wins over Greg Hogan. You know, he has wins over other great fighters like, he won a welterweight title, super welterweight title. I don't think he ever won a middleweight title. Not from the official titles. He didn't do that, but he fought some really good fighters, and he definitely is going to go into the Boxing Hall of Fame. Vinny Pazienza, you know, having wins over Roberto Duran, over Lloyd Honeyghan, who was a great welterweight. Greg Hogan lost to Roger Mayweather, but he at least faced Roger Mayweather. And, you know, these are the guys that he faced, okay? So he's a legendary fighter, for those of you who don't know. And so Roy Jones Jr. faced Vinny Pazienza and beat him, stopped him, okay? That's the third legendary fighter. We're not done. We got ways to go. Mike McCallum. I don't have to say nothing about Mike McCallum. Mike McCallum's a legendary fighter. Montel Griffin, he won a world title, but he's not a legendary fighter. Lou Duval is not a legendary fighter, even though he won a world title as well. But Virgil Hill is a legendary title fighter and also in the Hall of Fame. That's number 4. I don't need to show you that one. Reggie Johnson was a good world champion at a certain point, but not a legendary fighter. Julio Cesar Gonzalez, also not a legendary fighter. He faced John Ruiz, who was a world champion, but not a legendary fighter. Antonio Tarver was a world champion and did quite well, but he's not a legendary fighter in my book. Glenn Johnson, neither, even though they were great and they beat Roy. Felix Trinidad, another legendary fighter, that would be number 5. Joe Calsaki is not a legendary fighter, even though he lost to him. That would be number 6. And then I think that's about it. Is that it? Should have at least 2 more somewhere. Nope. Well, there are about 7 legendary fighters or 8 legendary fighters that Roy Jones Jr. faced. So yeah, I guess we'll include some. So it's Hopkins, Calzaki, that's 2. Felix Trinidad, that's 3. I will include Tarver and Glenn Johnson, that's 4 and 5. And we have Virgil Hill, which is 6. Mike McCallum, which is 7. Vinny Pancienza, which is 8. Bernard Hopkins, which is 9. Those are the legendary fighters that he faced. He did really, really well against those guys, right? So 8 or 9 of them. All right. Now let's look at Floyd Mayweather Jr. Okay, let's look at Floyd Mayweather Jr. and the legendary fighters that he faced. And you're going to see just how legendary these guys are. So let's start off with Gennaro Hernandez, is the first legendary fighter he faced. Undefeated super featherweight, lost only to Oscar De La Hoya back in 1995. As you can see, he was a long-reigning WBA super featherweight champion. He had a draw with Raul Perez, technical draw. He fought a lot of fighters. Okay. Then he lost to Oscar De La Hoya. He went up in weight to face Oscar De La Hoya for his WBO lightweight title. Lost to it. Came back down to super featherweight. For the Zuma Nelson beat him. Anatoly Alexandrov, who became later world champion, and Carlos Hernandez also became a world champion. Carlos Llerena also became a world champion. So he was a WBC long-reigning WBC super featherweight champion before he faced Floyd Mayweather and lost him. Now, just so you understand, he basically defended he was world champion and reigned as world champion for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 fights there, and WBC world super featherweight champion 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 fights this guy was world champion, which is crazy. Okay, so I consider him a legendary fighter because of that. Basically super featherweight champion. He went on to face the other legendary fighter, which is Diego Corrales. For those of you who don't know, Diego Corrales was a long-reigning, also IBF world champion, and then he went on to become world champion in other divisions. So he became the IBF world champion when he defeated Roberto Garcia, the trainer, with Mikey Garcia's brother and trainer. Go on to beat Derek Gainer and Angel Manfredi. He faced Floyd Mayweather Jr. and lose to him. And then he would go up. No, he would go up in weight and then come back down. Face Joel Casamayor, beat Acelino Freitas, and then beat Jose Luis Castillo. So that's what made him legendary. A lot of people say he didn't do enough to become legendary, but I think he did enough. If he didn't die, but another story. So Diego Corrales. Then Jose Luis Castillo is number 3. Castillo is a legendary fighter. Do I need to show you all his credentials? I mean, he won lightweight title multiple times, and he was long reigning for a while until Floyd came up. He then faced Arturo Gatti, who's a legend. That's 4. Should I say Zab Judah is a legendary fighter? Okay, I'm going to say Zab Judah that's 5. Oscar De La Hoya, that's 6. Wyman Oil Marquez, that's 7. Shane Mosley, that's 8. Miguel Cotto, that's 9. Saul Canelo Alvarez, that's 10. And Manny Pacquiao, which is 11. Yeah, 11 legendary fighters. And when you just look at the quality of these legendary fighters, I mean, okay, James Toney's an exception. Bernard Hopkins is an exception. But when you look at these other guys, they just can't be touched, can't be moved, can't be touched. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying. So when you look at Floyd Mayweather's level of options, which is more than Roy Jones Jr., and how he performed against that level of opposition, and the fact that Floyd had better defense, I would say that Floyd is the best ever. And obviously, also Floyd jumped up more weight classes than Roy did. But Roy has been a pioneer in some respects in what he's done in the sport. But again, I would have to say that whereas Roy says this statement here that Mayweather is not TBE, doesn't come close, I think he's just talking in terms of entertainment perspective, maybe. But when you're talking about overall, all-round boxing, all-round ability, skill, resume, attitude, mindset, etc., I think Floyd is TBE over Roy. So I think that's what he was saying. Because you see in the CompuBox stats, they're not much different offensively. It's defensively that Floyd makes the difference. He's a much more better defensive fighter all around than Roy is. So that's what I got to say. Hope you guys enjoyed this this segment. Let me see what you guys got to say in the comment section before I call it a day. Let me close down the screen share here. All right, what you guys saying, man? What you needs in the building? Talk to me. Apparently, everything's just freezing up for a minute. Quite sure why. Everything's just frozen up. Everything's frozen up. I'm not quite sure why. Okay, it's unfroze, which is good. Because it's all frozen up. I don't know if that was happening to you guys as I was shooting the video. Hopefully not. But if you guys ain't got no more questions, then I'm going to call it a day. Let me know if you guys want to converse. Leave your comments in the chat section. Leave your comments in the chat section. You're going to have 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, man, I got to go. But it was nice talking to you guys. Have a good one.